Please welcome the incredible Marley Jaxx. I love your name.
Thank you.
Like, is that real? Or is it like a stage name?
Story behind it. So I went through a divorce, as I was telling you before we hit record, and it was quite horrific and unfortunate, and but the best thing to happen, like so happy, on the other side of it. But when I was going through my divorce, I was a couple weeks away from speaking on a really big stage. I was about to speak at an event in front of 5,000 people. Tony Robbins was speaking at the event too, like Tom Billy, some big names that this was like a pinnacle of my career at this point. But yet I was going through a very personal transition, going through this divorce, and I didn't want my married name to follow me into this kind of, big moment in my life. And so I was with my mom and I was like, Mom, you named me once. I need you to name me again. I just pick a name. I'll take it. And I had a picture, actually, for anyone that's watching the video, a picture of this lion behind me. And I was like, but I want the name to make me feel the way that this lion makes me feel. Like it's just this fierce, powerful, but also like silent ferocity. And then she 30 seconds later said Jaxx. And I was like, what? Where did that come from? And she's like, it just popped in my head. And I was like, well, how do you spell it? And we're like playing with the signature. And that was it. That was the name. I didn't ask anyone's opinion on it. I didn't think about it. It was just like, that was the name. And so I legally changed my name to Jaxx after my divorce.
Oh, wow. That is so cool. You're like, sure, let's just do it. So it's Jaxx. I think about like my son, if he changed his last name to your last name, it'd be Max Jaxx.
Max Jaxx.
Max Jaxx.
Lots of fun ones in there.
Yeah. Okay. So you are super into content. So if you guys are listening in, open up Instagram and go check out her Instagram handle is Marley, Marley Jaxx, Jaxx, Marley Jaxx. I love the quick synopsis. What do you call these videos that you put out there where you're just highlighting some stuff that's happening in Hollywood?
It's like, I have this joke among my friends that if you give me a name, I will give you a fun fact. I just have all of this useless celebrity fun facts in my head. And then, my team was like, why don't you do videos where you just share your social media fun facts, but then we can also have a twist of marketing and content creation with here's what Steven Spielberg did this thing in this strategy that you can do on your Instagram. And so I don't know, I just call them celebrity fun facts, but with a marketing twist.
They're cool because that really what it does is it just showcases, your passion for the subject, but also you have that question about when we were talking about earlier was about how Kim Kardashian is now doing some sort of collaboration with the NBA for, is it a bikini or is it her?
Yeah, it's bikinis, which I know that she used to be married to a guy from the NBA, but what? I guess it's for the female audience. I don't know. It's interesting to break down these marketing campaigns and then understand what's Hollywood doing, because obviously Hollywood, they've got it right. They are the original storytellers. It's been working for, over 100 years. That what has worked 100 years ago, there's things that can still work today. And if we can dissect that and put it into our content today, I think that that's how people will get ahead and stay in the 1%.
Yeah. Talk about content. What a whirlwind. I was actually telling somebody the other day that I was like, I'm one of the OGs of Instagram, so proud of my status. And I've had the same account, knock on wood, since 2010 or something. Yeah. My first photo ever was of the original Apple store in downtown San Francisco. I'm like, that's almost meta in a way, on one of the original iPhones. Anyway, but I think back then Instagram wasn't necessarily, and I'm talking just specifically Instagram as the tool, wasn't really for business. It was really highlighting what you were eating. It was a foodie thing, a foodie tool. Okay, look at the donut that I just had. It has maple syrup and bacon and yum. And that was great. And now it's totally different. But what has really evolved in all of this too, especially the last 5-10 years, is video and the importance of video. And that's your jam, isn't it? So tell us, what is it that you do and who you do it for? Jam.
By the way, when you're saying the original Instagram, YouTube originally was a dating app.
What?
Yeah. It was like, I don't know if it was an app, but it was like when they were first developing it, one of the first videos is a video of a guy, like, it's almost like his sales pitch to women, I think. But
Well,
yeah,
fun fact, if you want to have a fun fact of me, once I reach celebrity status, you'll be able to share this on Instagram.
yes.
My husband and I met on Twitter.
Really?
Yep.
Like, did he
Back
slide
in-
into your DMs?
Well, both of our stories are very different. But it was like I was working at an organization that I managed their blog. We trained small business owners. And I saw that he was coming to Toronto to speak at an event. And I was like, oh, I'd love to meet you, pick your brain, like talk business stuff. And you can't really tell. Like back then, there was like tiny little photo of this person on Twitter to really get a sense. And I didn't really do that much digging. All I knew was that he was a Canadian in the Valley. And all my circle of entrepreneur friends knew who this person was. And so I met him and like totally going to hijack this conversation. But there's a building in Toronto called the Mars Center. And it is a beautiful atrium. So when you walk into the front entranceway, there's huge skylights right above at the entrance. And then there's a really long escalator that goes down to the lower level, where most of the events happen. And so I was early, checked into this event, and I was waiting at the bottom of the escalator for him because we were going to meet.
This already sounds like a Titanic moment, like coming down the stairs.
So is.
The moment you met.
Like, yeah, it was super busy. And all of a sudden, it's like all the crowd cleared. At the top of the stairs is this guy with a black Flowtown t-shirt on and a bag. And he was on his phone, of course. And he's like, comes down. And it's almost like the sun comes out behind the skylights and the sunbeams are beaming down behind him. The escalator slows down. But it doesn't really. This is how I recall the story.
This is just a replay,
yeah. And then
cinematic replay.
He reaches the bottom and he's like, oh, hey, you must be Renee. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is really good looking and he's tall. I'm a 6 foot tall woman. So that's like the filter.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, he's cute. And I totally brushed him off because I was nervous. And he had like muffin crumbs on his shirt because he was eating a muffin. I was like, so anyway.
So it was like love and first sight, but played it cool.
But going back to what we're going to talk about though, tell me something about the story that I just told you that could work in a video.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So people love personal stories as much as like you and Dan, you have these cool careers and you fly private and you can share all of the softwares and the fun, cool entrepreneurs and things that you learn. Like people want to hear the meet cute story. Like people are obsessed with that moment. So even if you replayed that, but then you had that twist of like, he had muffin crumbs on his shirt and like, but I like thought it was love at first sight and I was able to overlook the muffin crumbs. And then, but I would also want to hear what was his side of the story. Like, was he trying to play it cool because he saw you at the bottom of the stairs first too? Like, I'd love to see the side by side of both of your thoughts, both of your opinions of like what happened in that moment. And then I want to know what happened after, because obviously now you guys are together, married, building an empire. But like, if that's the meet cute, of course, in every good rom-com or Hollywood movie, there's the inciting incident. There's the moment of no return, the crossing the threshold. Like, I want to know those moments next, because then that makes me fall in love with you two as characters. And if we fall in love with you after that, your brand can go anywhere and sell anything.
Oh, this is like a Hallmark movie.
Right.
They actually shoot a lot of Hallmark movies in Kelowna and Edmonton.
And in Canada in general. Yeah.
Stories about us. We could just act the characters. Okay, this is really interesting. And like, so people that are listening are probably thinking, okay, I got a business. So what's my cute story about? Like, how is that story of Dan coming down the escalator relevant to me, who is in PR? How is this going to actually get people to listen to me, pay attention, follow me, buy from me?
I think it's kind of, you could have a twist on it because anything you see can turn into content. Even a conversation that you overhear at the gas station, the grocery store, or something that your kid said to you this morning, or a mistake you made in an email or whatever. Like if you do PR, let's turn this into how you're always putting your best foot forward. You're trying to build a brand publicly. Hear this gorgeous man comes down the escalator and you turn into a PR agent, that you have to represent your best self. And so does he. He turns into his own PR agent. That the beginning of dating is typically two PR agents dating, until then the walls start to come down and vulnerabilities start to come out. Like that could be a tangent story that people can relate to in terms of relationships, PR, and branding.
Yeah, 100%. So my podcast coach, Kevin, I just put it in Slack the other day. I was like, hey, what's a good practice to do to come up with really good solo episode ideas? Because I'm not struggling there. I have so many ideas and I can sit there and just speak forever, but like, what's something that's really going to hit? And his reply was, hey, what are the conversations you had the last week or two with a client or with somebody like who's following you that might be relevant to something that's personal or professional or about your business? Because it doesn't always have to be about the PR tips for your small business, right? Because guess what? People buy from those they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
Right? Like they don't even you don't even have to be the best in the world at what you do, but if they know you and trust you, they like you, then it's good enough. It's good enough.
And it's funny the things that you'll say kind of like offhand that maybe you mentioned this thing of by the way in an Instagram story and people will like jump on that story. Like some of the wildest times that these little things that I do in my content that people remember. Like there was one time that I was house sitting for a friend that had chickens. And I would let the chickens out of their coop in the morning. And just as a joke, I would like say inspirational quotes to it while they were leaving the chicken coop. I'd be like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Get out there. Good hustle to chickens. And like people loved it. And I was like, well, now like chicken content is a pillar of my content. Okay. Like now this is who I am.
Is that what you call it? The chicken content?
I just made that up. I haven't done it in a long time. I haven't house sat for this friend, but like
that's really good.
That was in 2020, also when people were in pandemics and starting their own, backyard chicken coops.
And everybody was raising chickens back then, too.
Right. Everyone's just like getting a hobby chicken farm. And it became like something that people were like, how are your chickens? Like when I would see them in public, I'd be like, I did that, 3 times on Instagram and it became a thing.
So that's how people remember you because, hey, I talk about this thing called the authority arc. So it's about how you build authority in your industry. And there's the 3 R's of the authority arc. Being rare, your reputation, and reach. So being rare is like you said inspirational messages to these chickens, like the most inspired chickens in the world that probably produce now the best eggs. Now those people are eating the best breakfast. Totally. No cholesterol, high protein because they're inspired chickens.
Yes.
But that's what's rare is like nobody else was doing that. And that is not even what you do. However, people remembered you for that. So that's what makes you rare.
Yes. I love rarity being the pillar of it. I like to talk about disruptive content because the rest of the stuff is just like stupid obvious. Like, hey, have a good day today. It takes, do the hard work to succeed. Like, are you really actually contributing to society saying that stuff? Like, it's so obvious.
Maybe. It depends. Maybe not once. But on repetition.
Like, what's the story behind it?
Yeah, 100% what's the story behind it. So how do people then go in digging and extract these stories? Because a lot of people are coasting. We don't realize that we have these really golden nuggets hidden somewhere. How do they find them? How do they get their chicken story, their chicken method?
We do this exercise with our clients. It's called story inventory. And it's like, you can look at your stories in chronological order. Like when I just ask you, like, okay, if you think about maybe the most impactful teacher you had, or a lesson that your mom told you when you were young that still stuck with you today, or someone that broke your heart, or, something that happened to a friend of yours that you wish that you could have helped them out. Like if I say just those little prompts, like you probably had dozens of stories that popped up in your mind. And as you come up with one, then like the next one will come and the next one will come. You can be on this like flow state of just writing down memories. And you can have like a Google Doc or a note section in your phone where you just write down these memories and then can think of how can I relate this to business? So I came up with this when I was watching, scrolling through Instagram and I saw this big influencer who was just like, you can do anything you set your mind to. You can do it. And it's like, cool, great. Yeah. Like little pat on the back, some, kindergarten teacher fluff, but like, give me some substance to that. And so I was thinking, well, let me go to my story inventory and how can I take some content, because the best movies, the best stories that we tell our kids at bedtime is like there's a lesson wrapped into a story, like the moral of the story. And so I was like, I went through my story inventory and I told this story. I did this at an event. I told the story from stage of my grandfather who, was 92 years old when he passed away. But I lived with him for about 4 years of my life in my 20s. And he would talk to this picture of my grandmother every day after my grandmother passed. And he was just like, she was such a good girl. Like, I loved her. She never complained. Like, they had a hard life. And the story was that when he first married my grandmother, he went after his dreams of being a photographer. And he would tell these beautiful stories of like, he would just get it. We're from Canada. He would come in, he would go to hockey games for free just by having a camera and looking like he was someone important. And he would take pictures of the hockey games. And then at the schools, he would take pictures of the kids for their class pictures and like tell the story of the girl that like would hold the mirror up and like smile. She's like, okay, now take it. Like he had all these stories that he clearly loved his photography. But then one day he gets a call from his parents, and he is one of the oldest of 10 children. And his parents are saying, we're going to lose the farm and we need help or we're going to lose everything. And so none of the other siblings at that time were available to drop everything and help. But my grandfather sold his studio, took his new wife, and they moved in with his parents to help them save the farm. And so they saved the farm. But then at that point, it was like they had so much wrapped up in the farm that he could never go back to photography. And he would tell these stories of him being riding on the tractors in the fields, crying. And his wife, who he knew that she didn't want to be the wife of a farmer, but like she did it. She never complained. They planted those, those gardens. So all that to say, we now live in a time where you have more choices and you can do anything you set your mind to. You don't have to lose your dreams like this. So see how I took that you can do anything you set your mind to, but then I added a story to it that hopefully got you thinking about your sweet grandparents and the sacrifices they made and what we're able to do now because of what our grandparents' lives set us up for. And that now with the technology we have today and with the opportunities we have, we don't have to necessarily be stuck in jobs that we don't want and not go after our dreams. So see how I just like same lesson, wrapped it into a meaningful story that hopefully is tugging at heartstrings or pulling some kind of emotion.
So how many stories should somebody have in their bank, their story bank?
I mean, infinite. Like it's not like, okay, I got to fill this up with like 100 stories. Like that's a good start. But the thing is, it's almost like a muscle that as you start to become aware, it's like that reticular activation system. If you start like, oh, that's a nice car, you're going to start seeing that car everywhere. If you think, I want to come up with stories, you'll then in the moment be like, ooh, that's a story. Like that thing that my kid said, or that email that I got that was worded kind of funny, or this thing that happened at the grocery store. Like stories are all around you. And then it just becomes up to you to see, how do I twist this into something that's going to make people feel an emotion and connect them to me as a storyteller?
Mm-hmm. So we do that for interview prep for podcasts and the media, where we look at your frameworks. For mine is the authority arc. I already explained that, right? So you think about like a rainbow. At the end of the rainbow is a pot of gold, and the arc is really is a beautiful rainbow. And so you start at identifying how you're rare, and then there's things under rarity. And then the next one is reputation, how you're building your reputation, maintaining that reputation. And the last R is reach, how you're extending your reach. Now, so there's like 3 or 4 things under each one. And if you actually find a story to connect to that, it makes the framework not only easier to remember, but more exciting for the listener, because we just don't want to hear regurgitated ways of methods and tactics of doing it. We want stories. Yes. Because stories evoke emotion. Emotion is what makes people angry, happy, sad, excited, you name it. And that's how people remember you. And that is something that you're good at.
And strong emotional reactions too. Like you have to be okay with people not liking it. That if you're going to take a stand for something, and I talk about being disruptive, and funny that like one of the first things I hear is like, well, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be rude to people. And I'm like, disruptive doesn't mean offensive, although people can be offended by a message that they don't agree. And that's, that's up to them. We're not responsible for other people's triggers, but people that were disruptive historically that are remembered, like Jesus, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, like there were Martin Luther King, there are people that didn't agree with them, but they're also the people that are remembered that did good things for the world and created a massive impact. Earlier last year, I made a documentary on cancel culture. And instead of being like, okay, here's the facts about cancel culture, and people said this, and this was mean, and people are hurt, and we shouldn't do this anymore, I actually did it as a social experiment where it was a social experiment to see if I could get myself canceled.
Okay, I was listening to one of your podcast episodes, I think, about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was quite disruptive. Well, it worked.
What's it about?
So it was an experiment where I got myself canceled. And so it was like 7 days and 7 different experiments. And I don't know if I should give it away because people can go watch it on YouTube and there's a big plot twist at the end.
Okay, then don't give it away. So it's on your YouTube channel, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah. If you go to youtube.com/Marley Jaxx, it's right there. Okay. And we won awards at the Manhattan Film Festival, the LA Documentary Film Festival. It's been submitted for an Emmy Award. Wow. And it was really cool because instead of just like, hey, here's this documentary we made, it was launched with the social experiment, which was a really big publicity stunt, which people hated it and people loved it. The people that hated it are still talking about it. The people that loved it are still talking about it. Because there were strong emotional reactions, it took on its own legs. Because then there were, people on both sides that were like, I loved it because of this. I didn't like it because of this. Like, that's kind of what we want as creators, that it's going to create a conversation regardless of us being the one that is still pushing it. Like, other people are still talking about it. Or if I walk into a room, people will be like, that was a cool documentary. How'd you do that? What happened from here? So I love creating content. And like, that's the mantra for everything is like, it has to be disruptive.
Yeah. I always say in order to be successful, to create an impact is you have to be, I always forget this word. Oh, controversial. Mm-hmm. You have to be controversial. And I'm not saying it's like you're pro-Ukraine or not. That could be the thing. But the meaning is that most people are just afraid to speak up, to share their stories, to share their experiences, because it's going to be controversial to someone. A perfect example, and I always come back to this, is co-sleeping with kids.
Oh, right.
When Dan and I got married, we're having kids. One of the foundational rules for us is we're not co-sleeping. Mm-hmm. And I'm a very light sleeper, so it would affect my sleep like crazy. Dan wouldn't have been bothered by it, but also we did research, and yes, there's some pros and some cons. But the moment that I said I'm against it in our house for co-sleeping, I mean, whatever you do in your house is your business, not my business. People were insulted by it. And then what they did was these mothers basically generalized me being a bad parent entirely because I didn't believe in co-sleeping. So everything about what I did as a parent was like now bad so when you look at that, it's like for them, that's a very important trigger. So there might be trauma wrapped around that for them. There's something there. And maybe there was something there for me too. But I was so afraid to share my journey into motherhood because I knew that these people were going to show up, and they do. And some of these people followed me, some of them unfollowed me. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like we're so worried about
them anyway.
Well, and you did a whole documentary about this. We're so worried about the unfollow because then it comes as an insult. But most of the time it's not because we've done anything wrong. We're just sharing our opinion and other people just don't agree. Mm-hmm. And it's just easy to try to go and cancel somebody because of it.
And it's triggering something in them that they feel like they need to lash out for whatever reason. And the cancel culture documentary speaks a lot about that, of like often they are lashing out because they can't accept something inside themselves. I have a similar story. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer a couple years ago, and I healed it naturally. And at the time, like, of course, when I was first diagnosed, was like, I was in a whirlwind of emotion of what do I do? They want me to have this hysterectomy and then have these like other treatments. And at first I was like, I'm a victim. I have to do this, until I'm so glad that when I shared my story, people reached out with their opinions, which of course can be inundating. But some people reached out with like, hey, have you considered this natural path of healing? And less than a year later, my test came back with no evidence. Yet some people would be offended by that still, that I did this path instead of another. And I even had people accusing me of faking it for 15 minutes of fame, or like, how dare you share, like, this worked for you, but that's an exception and you're going to kill other people by sharing that.
How dare you get healthy by the way that you want to do it, right? And I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole with this too, especially when like the pandemic stuff. But here's the thing: is that's a perfect example of you understand you could be faced with really tough resistance in sharing that story. Because in our society, we assume if you're diagnosed with cancer, you immediately go through these treatments that everybody else does because that's what you're supposed to do. And most people don't even question it. They just do it because that's what people do. Doctors don't even question it. So I'm actually reading a book by Dr. Atia. Oh my gosh, what's the name of the book? The longevity book. And he talks about like medicine 2.0 to medicine 3.0. And how medicine 3.0 isn't necessarily about extending life, like living longer, although that's probably going to be a de facto, but it's about extending the quality of your life. So instead of turning 70 and all of a sudden everything going to crap, you still have energy. You can keep up at 70. You still might die before 100, but your quality of life is extended. And so he's really kind of cracking the egg open with that because it's really interesting. And I guess he got a lot of heat from it. Naturally, he would. And it's a really thick book too. And I'm reading it like all proud of myself, thinking I know about medicine 3.0. I'm a doctor now. No, but you have to stand for something that comes back to like what you put out on the social, that comes back to the YouTube videos. So. If you're only seeing this or you're only listening to it, there's actually a YouTube plaque behind Marley because you have quite a few thousand subscribers, hundreds.
Yes, a few thousand.
Yeah. And as we were starting to record this, you were talking about how all this stuff really transpired rather quickly in the last, year or so?
Yes.
What you're doing. So you had how many subscribers last year?
January 1st, 2023, we had 40,000 subscribers. And I started my YouTube channel in 2016. I started it as a side hustle or as like a little side project when I was a dental hygienist before I even knew what entrepreneurship really was. And so I was just at the beginning, I was putting out these little like how-to videos. And so I just had a little social media side hustle. I was basically answering frequently asked questions that I was getting from my clients, which then grew into, I love making movies. Like my dream as a kid was I want to make movies in Hollywood. Still do, working towards it, like gonna happen. But I was like making these videos. And then at some point I was like, I want to do this big. Like I want to get to 100,000 subscribers. And like I have a YouTube agency. I help people create their content, disruptive content. Really it's platform agnostic on any platform, but content that's going to turn them into an A-list brand. But I was working towards how do I get to this like elusive 100,000 subscribers? Like we have clients that, by the way, for anyone listening to that, like it's an arbitrary number. We have clients that have like 1,000 subscribers and are making great money, 6-7 figures even. So it's not about that. But when you're doing it as a business, people will always look at, well, but how come you don't have 100,000
Well,
subscribers?
it's kind of like the bald barber or the overweight trainer, nutritionist, right?
Yeah.
It's like, gotta walk the walk.
Fine. Let me show you. So there was a couple years where I was putting out 3 to 5 videos a week and like thinking, quantity is going to help, casting that hook out there and is also going to help me to improve in my skill, which of course it did. Like the reps is going to make you stronger. But then at one point I was like, I'm just exhausted by this. I lost the reason why I started doing it. And then I found this stat that said only 1% of YouTube channels ever get to 100,000 subscribers. So I was like, well, if I want to have what the 1% have, you have to do what 99% are not willing to do. And so I was like, what would be completely disruptive or against what I've been doing this whole time? So I took a little bit of a break from social media for a bit just to like reposition, figure out what do I want to create? Because I want to look at all my content and be like, that was a banger. I loved filming it. I love the production of it. I want to be impressed by my own. If I don't enjoy it, why would I expect anyone else to? So then we came up with this idea of like, let's make a documentary. Let's make like Hollywood on YouTube. And it took us 4 months for this first one. Of course, we were like figuring out how do you script these? How do you lock the script? How do you produce them and the editing team and everything? And it was really like a group of 3 of us. It was me, my videographer, my editor, which is incredible. And so January 1st, 2023, we had 40,000 subscribers. I released that first documentary in April. Then I released a second documentary in August. And September, we had 100,000 subscribers. Like I only posted 2 videos and we went from 40 to 100.
Wow. Okay. So then the trick is to create documentaries.
Maybe. We also talk about content personality syncing. Like sometimes people, and I think that's what was going wrong with me before, is I was just putting out these talking head videos and let me tell you about these facts and these things, but it wasn't synced to my personality. So when we're talking about like, what are the stories that people are going to resonate with you, or how is your performance that is actually like emanating your soul, your spirit, who you truly are, that like wasn't coming through in that content because I was just like putting in the reps without actually enjoying what I was doing. But now this, I'm like, I'm obsessed with it. It's all I want to do. Like I'm so excited about creating more content that builds the business so that the money from that, I can keep building more amazing content like this.
Yeah. That's the trick. Mm-hmm. And what I'm learning too in the world of podcasting, especially this year, 2024, is that the best way to approach content is to not have a podcast and then put it on YouTube. It's actually to have a YouTube show and then put it out as a podcast. And that kind of, and I didn't say blew my mind, but I was just resisting it. I resisting it because we did the whole, like, put the episodes onto YouTube and, they were getting like 20, 30, 40 views and I was getting like hundreds of subscribers. And I'm like, gosh, this is slow. And then I would question myself, do people actually want to watch a podcast? And then I think, Joe Rogan, of course people want to do this. Right. Do they want to watch me? I don't know. People don't know about me, but they might know about my guests. And so what I'm really seeing, especially going into this year, is the video first approach will be the game changer because, this evolution of AI too, it's really easy. I've heard this before. A former client had AI write a blog post based on some really cool prompts, then had his wife read the post and then used some sort of tool that essentially now allowed a software to read blog posts in her voice to make it sound like a podcast episode.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy now to be stuck behind and kind of hidden behind all the technology that's being out there. And the one thing that it's really hard to create is video. And video with an actual guest or video of you out in public doing stuff. Like AI can't really recreate that. They're getting there, but it would be inauthentic and you would know.
That'd be really interesting to see. Imagine like your AI and my AI, and let's just see what they talk about.
Seriously.
That'd be really interesting to see what direction
they see what happens. They start glitching. What's going on? Okay. So on this YouTube stuff, when you published these 2 documentaries, was there anything different in the way you published them or you promoted them, or did you just throw them up there?
No, we created a whole new category of video. We called it the DocuStunt. It was a documentary publicity stunt. So it wasn't just something that we like created this video and then posted it or maybe sent out a couple we didn't even send out emails. I think maybe we did after, but it wasn't like a teaser. Okay, rolling out the red carpet. This thing is coming. We launched it with a publicity stunt, which was the social experiment, which the public didn't know that it was a social experiment until the documentary was launched, which was perfect because the audience was really emotional. Like we created a lot of tension with this publicity stunt, which I don't want to give it away because you got to watch the documentary and there's a big plot twist at the end where you're like, oh my gosh. So the way that we launched it was after the audience was already tense, like what the heck is going on, was, by the way, here's the documentary that explains everything that you just experienced.
Wow.
And certainly there were people that said, I feel emotionally manipulated, how like you toyed with our emotions. And then after seeing the documentary answers, guess what? The media is doing it all the time. I actually pulled back the curtain to show you how we did it and showed you how you can be armed for this in the future. And certainly there were people that like still hated it. And there were some YouTube videos made calling me a manipulator and whatever. But then more so people that were like, that was brilliant marketing, brave to do. Cause there was also a lot of risk.
The trolls and haters, do they not even know that the more that they talk about it, the more exposure it gives you?
Like, thanks. Like, and you know what? I feel like that also helped me to overcome any negativity online. Like if I ever get messages now that are mean or whatever, because I went through that, I'm like, I went through that. Like, this is fine. I had a lot of, and there was a lot of risk in doing that because with the publicity stunt, it could have gone the wrong way. and it could have like totally ruined my reputation because it was an experiment to get myself canceled. If it went wrong, like all stakes were like.
But you were willing to take that risk because you had conviction that you were going to get the point across.
And I knew that no matter how it was perceived, I also still had the ability to communicate how it's meant to be perceived. Like and actually you'll see in the documentary, and then we also did a behind the scenes documentary of here's how we did it. It's called Fabricating a Scandal. We showed where things did go wrong for a little bit. Like people were really mad, and some people that we had involved as like side characters to be part of the social experiment started getting more hate than I did. And then we were like, oh, that's not like, we wanted me to get canceled, not them to get canceled. And so I had to repair that. And so we like had to stop production for, I don't know, a couple hours and come up with a new strategy to turn the hate back on me, which is an interesting position to be in, to be like, I need to do something online right now to make people hate me in the next hour. What do you do?
Oh, wow. That's a great leader, by the way.
We fabricated a text that then someone posted a screenshot of a text that I allegedly sent to turn the tides over.
Wow.
Like I get PTSD a little bit thinking about it because it was such an adrenaline rush. But it was also like just one of the most creative experiences I've ever had.
Okay. So I know that most listeners wouldn't have that capacity from a like resource perspective or creativity perspective. But when it comes to like your business and getting the word out about your business, growing your personal brand, what are the easier steps, the sustainable steps to actually kickstart a YouTube channel or grow the one that you have? Let's just bring it down to the basics.
It's ideation. It's not necessarily that you need better videos. You need better ideas. And the ideas, they don't have to be Hollywood blockbuster budget crazy ideas, but they can be positioned in ways that people aren't thinking of. So for example, I gave this example in a training I did the other day where it was like, would you be interested in watching a video that's like 6 tips for cleaning your house? No. But then there's this woman that I pulled a screenshot of her YouTube channel. She has like 9 million subscribers. And there's this one video that has like 20 million views on it. And what she does on her channel is she will go to like the filthiest houses all over the world. And she'll show like, and it's fascinating for the viewer to be like,
is she on TikTok? She got me on TikTok because I follow somebody like that. And it's, I don't know why, but it's really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like mesmerizing watching this person clean a really dirty house.
Yeah. Because there's the part of you that's like, how did it even get to this point?
Exactly.
How is she going to do this? What's the before and after going to look like? Like even those, I had my grandfather that I told you I lived with. He was quite the hoarder. Like I renovated his house. I have a before and an after picture that I'm like, we didn't know there was a window in this room. And so things like that people want to see the experience, but also be able to live it vicariously. Because I don't want to clean that house, but I want to watch you do it.
Yeah, I want to see the before and after. I don't want to renovate, but I want to see you renovate your house.
Yes, exactly. So things like that, like how do you come up with an idea that is, like you said, mesmerizing or has the train wreck effect that you think that things are going to go all wrong. And then right at the last moment, like, what a banger. They made it amazing epiphany moment. And now let me binge watch the next one.
Okay. My brain is going on full blast here, thinking about what I could do for myself, but then also what my clients can do. Mm-hmm. So I have a woman who's a celebrity dog trainer. She doesn't call herself that, but I do because she trained one celebrity. So now she's officially a celebrity dog trainer.
Of course, you have to grab that win when you can.
Yeah. And her approach to dog training is different than other trainers that are actually celebrity trainers. They themselves have built a brand around them. And she has a different way of training. And I've studied her stuff and the other stuff. She actually brought me through an 1.5 hour long training over Zoom with my own dog. Cool. So that I can actually compare what it was like with what we went through in that. And it goes against most norms when it comes to training. And it's more like compassionate. So I think about like, what are the ideas we can put out for them for YouTube videos? We want to see, like for them, we'd want to see how she's training the dog.
Yeah.
One example would be like how to get your dog to stop barking when somebody rings the doorbell.
Right. And like, are there strategies that she can do there that you would think that this is the obvious way of doing it, But then you zig when they zag. You have to do what people are not even assuming. Like maybe she does something where she's like, hey, I want this dog to bark until it's like so sick of barking. The neighbors hate your house. They're going to egg your house because of this. But here's what we did. And then the rest of the dogs in the neighborhood are learning from this example. And the neighbors are like, how did they do this in 24 hours? Something like that. That like you're also raising the stakes along the way. And there can even be some side stories going on with, well, the stakes are high because the mother-in-law is about to come visit. And if the mother-in-law doesn't like this dog, then you're going to hear it and it's going to be terrible. Yeah. Like we also have these side stories that, just like in movies are raising the stakes. Like or I like to use example of like Friends. You see the story going on with like Joey and Chandler. And then on the side, you see what's happening with Rachel and Monica. And there's these like story threads weaving together and leading to these mini payoffs while also eventually coming to the finale payoff and showing like, here's the outcome. So in that case with the dog, it would be like, obviously the finale is the dog stops barking at the mailman every single time. And then like, what are the side stories? Maybe it's the mother-in-law coming. Maybe it's that there's a time crunch. Maybe the dog trainer didn't realize there's a time crunch. And so like, she's under extra pressure to get it done. When it comes to the expertise of the dog trainer, I'd have to like talk to them to be like, okay, how do we pull out the strategy in a way that there's like a story that the audience can really be mesmerized by.
And a solution so that we're not pigeonholed by, oh no, this dog didn't get trained. It's still barking like crazy.
Stay tuned for the next episode where hopefully we do it.
So like this, in my mind, this seems like high production where there's like different scenes and stuff. When we bring it back to even the most basics, what still works on YouTube in terms of content? Like direct to camera without any B-roll, like does that stuff still work?
Yeah. And what I'm mentioning, like that's like documentary style content. Yeah. But when we work with our clients, I mentioned content personality syncing, where we're creating content based on how much time do you have? Like if you have an hour a week to film content, here's what we're going to do. That's like the most effective strategy for that amount of time. And also for what matches your personality. If they're like, if you put me in front of a camera and just give me a topic, like I can speak in sound bites and like I can nail it. You might have people that they're like, I get nervous in front of the camera, but I'm really good in an interview format and can just volley with a guest. And like, that's perfect. You look at Joe Rogan that you mentioned, his production quality isn't even that crazy. It's like, he's got a few different cameras and it's the message in what he's verbally saying that's making it so, and of course the guests that he speaks to. But then there's also people that like, you know what else I'm noticing is, instead of just like direct to camera, having the like, okay, the microphone and like looking off camera and the audience as a third person, people are fascinated by that because they feel like, ooh.
Like Layla Hermosi was talking about that in a video not that long ago. It used to be where you're like direct facing the camera and that was the person you're having the conversation with, but then it was the side. And now they go between the two. They have those little board things on their desk and they press between both cameras and it's not expensive anymore. And it doesn't take a lot. Like I have a Canon camera set up, so I don't use my computer camera. And you just have to download one extra software. And then all the like Zoom, Riverside, all this stuff detects it. They know. It's not hard to get this stuff set up.
Yeah. And just the way that the audience perceives it. On one hand, I might think, well, do they feel like you're not connecting with them because they're not face to face? But then on the other hand, they can also feel like, ooh, I get to be a fly on the wall for this exclusive conversation, which makes it feel more important. And sometimes like you can kind of catch when people on Instagram, you can tell that they just filmed their content. They're not actually talking to anyone, but they filmed it that way. Do you ever see that?
No.
Oh.
No. So is it like they're pretending it's alive or something?
They're pretending that they're in a conversation, but you can kind of just tell that they're not.
So there's this guy that I follow on TikTok because he's cute. I'm just going to say that. But I'm fascinated by his evolution in his bodybuilding. Anybody that has lost weight and are building muscle, I'm super fascinated by it because that's the journey I'm on.
Yeah.
And he doesn't ever record himself talking. It's him like doing bicep curls or something. But he always seems to be talking to somebody off camera. Like there's always somebody behind, just on the angle behind the camera. I'm like, who are you talking to? Who's there? I want to know. But it's like, it intrigues me. I'm like, is there anybody there? Maybe there's a buddy. Maybe there's not. I think most times there's not. There's people in the gym, so they're watching him. But it's fascinating and it's captivating beyond his biceps.
Well, and look what it's doing for you. It's creating a question mark in your mind. It's creating an open loop, which you're like, will this ever be answered? If it's going to, I have to keep watching to be able to find out. And that's what Hollywood does in movies is like, if you ever, this is like a cool exercise is to observe your own behavior, observe the own thoughts that pop up in your head. Like watch the first 60 seconds of a movie. And hopefully it's not an old movie where they like showed the trailers before the movie even started, like a new movie. And what are the questions that come up in your mind that you're like, who's that person? Why is he sitting there? What did this say? He just said that he needed to go see this girl. Who's that girl? How is he in a relationship with her? Like all of these little micro hooks, these micro open loops get opened. And then throughout the movie, they'll open more and then they'll close some and then they'll open more and they'll close some. And that's like the mini finales leading up to this grand finale.
Yeah. Oh,
and so
it's so
same thing in
intriguing.
talking head content too. Like you mentioned, well, okay, this seems like it's different storylines. I'm totally thinking like movies, but even for just talking head content, or even if you look at some of my YouTube videos, I have documentary style, but I also have talking head where I'm breaking down celebrity marketing strategies, but I'm like, here's this strategy. And then you need to know how she actually, like I did this one on Taylor Swift and I'm like, here's how she made $1 billion, but it's not through this. It's actually through this. And so I'm like opening loops in her strategy. And for people that are interested in whether it's how she became a billionaire or interested in Taylor Swift or interested in the controversy, like I've opened up loops throughout that you have to watch all the way through to find out.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. My podcast coach tells me about that in solo episodes. How you can't just jump straight to the thing. You actually have to save the thing for close to the end. So people, but you have to make it make sense that they want to stay to the end anyway. So talking about Taylor Swift is my kids and I are working on this project for my youngest son, Noah's school. We have to contribute he goes to a really cool, like smaller private school, but we have to contribute to their school's cookbook.
Cool.
And part of it is like find something like in your family history, like a unique recipe that your family's always shared. And I always like to kind of break the rules. So I'm like, you know what? We're just going to make up our own recipe. And we created this thing called, the beaver tails in Canada?
Oh, yes, of course.
Right. If you don't know what it is, go Google beaver tails Canada and you'll know.
It's not an actual beaver. Or is it?
So we created a thing called, it's a donut and pizza. So we were deconstructing the beaver tail. I was like, hey guys, like, what do you think the dough is made of? They're like, well, maybe it's the stuff that's made from a donut, but it's a flat donut. So maybe it's pizza stuff too. Like probably, right? So a pizza and a donut. So we created the thing called the doza. It's a donut pizza. So it's like a beaver tail, same ingredients as a beaver tail. And when we started to create the different, quote, flavors, so essentially the toppings of it, one of the things that my youngest son created was the Swiftie. The Swiftie is a flavor of doza that essentially is going to look like a unicorn, of course. It's going to glimmer with some stuff. When you build the influence to become, well, not as great as Taylor Swift, you can have things like dozas named after you.
Named after you. That's what we like. That's, we made it.
And that's a great YouTube video, is just videotaping my kids and I making the doza, our first doza. We're doing that this weekend.
Love it.
I never even thought about that. Now, okay, because we got to wrap this up, a really quick question. When it comes to like production, are people actually shooting on their iPhones?
For sure. I mean, Selena Gomez and Lady Gaga did their music videos on their iPhones. So for sure.
That is crazy.
Yeah. It's just like people overcomplicate it.
I got this.
And they're like, what camera should I use? I'm like, the one you have. What editing software should I use? The one you have. Like or outsource it so that you don't have to worry about it, because your creative energy is going to be so much more useful in coming up with the ideas, because you don't need better videos. You need better ideas, and then outsource the rest or just do what's easy.
That's fascinating. Okay. So, I have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
I think about that quote about well-behaved women are the ones who rarely make history. And so being a wild woman, being like, I'm not trying to behave and do what I'm told or be obedient. I'm here to make an impact. I'm here to be disruptive. And as a result, make history.
Ooh. And what I love about the imagery right behind your head is a wild lion. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to take a picture of this. So if people want to go online to find you, where can they go?
Go to youtube.com/Marley Jaxx, Instagram.com/Marley Jaxx. We also have a training that you can check out where we talk about how do we do this to hijack attention through disruptive content. And that's at hijackattention.com.
That's cool. And then I'm not too sure when this episode's coming out, but you have a training coming up Feb 1st. Is that correct? Or something?
Yeah, we do. So we have something called the Icon of Your Industry workshop, and we do it once a month. So iconofyourindustry.com.
Cool. That I'm going to check that out too.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.